Welcome to this deep dive, and today we're going to be unpacking something pretty powerful.
Mm.
It's all about opening up, and the surprising ways that even like small connections can really make a big difference.
Yeah.
We've got this a super interesting story about a guy named Alex, and despite having like a tight group of friends, this guy struggled silently, like for years with his mental health.
Wow.
And it really makes you think, right? Like, how often do we miss the signs, even in the people we're closest to?
It is fascinating how often we kind of try to put on a happy face, especially like in a group dynamic. It's like there's this unspoken pressure to keep things positive and not, burden others with our problems.
It's true. It's true.
No.
Okay, so let's break down what was going on with Alex. So this guy, he's got a solid group of friends, 15 of them, and they've been meeting up every year for 20 days, like solid 20 days
Mm.
of just pure fun and connection.
Yeah.
They've been doing this for over a decade, but this whole time he's battling anxiety, depression, this deep sense of loneliness. It's kind of wild, right? Like surrounded by all these friends, but still feeling so isolated.
And what's interesting here is that it goes beyond just like hiding the negative emotions. This is something that psychologists call concealing coping.
Hmm.
And what this means is that, he's projecting this positivity to try to, avoid kind of messing up the group dynamic.
Oh, wow.
You know what I mean? It's like a self-preservation. And it really raises the question, have you ever felt this kind of pressure to be like the happy one in your group of friends?
That's such a good point. I mean, I think we've all been there, haven't we?
Yeah.
Like where you feel like you can't really.
Yeah.
So instead of like leaning on his friends Alex, he starts turning to all these harmful coping mechanisms, right? We're talking alcohol, cutting, reckless behavior, all that kind of stuff, just as a way to deal with this inner turmoil.
And these coping mechanisms, while they might offer like temporary relief in the moment, they often lead to like a pretty dangerous downward spiral.
Oh, yeah.
It's a vicious cycle, and it's incredibly hard to break free from.
Absolutely. And that's where things start to get really interesting.
Yeah.
So at some point, Alex finally confides in two of his closest friends, right? Like he finally shares what he's been going through. And you'd think that, being that close, that they would have noticed something was off.
Yeah, we often assume that close friends just kind of inherently know if we're struggling, but the reality is people are really, really good at hiding their pain.
Hmm.
And this often leads to a situation where, even the people closest to us are left totally in the dark.
It's so true. It really makes you wonder just how many people are out there silently dealing with these kinds of things, afraid to like reach out because they're worried about being judged or rejected.
It's way more common than you might think. I mean, the fear of being seen as, weak or a burden, it's so powerful.
Right.
And it can really stop people from getting the support that they so desperately need.
Absolutely. But here's the thing. Here's where Alex's story takes this really unexpected turn.
Yeah.
It wasn't one of his closest friends who ended up being this like catalyst for his healing. It was actually the girlfriend of one of his friends, someone he barely even knew.
That's wild. It really speaks to the, unpredictable nature of how we connect as humans.
Totally.
Sometimes help and support come from these completely unexpected sources, people who have this unique ability to really see us and hold space for our pain without judgment.
It's true. I mean, she must have seen something in him,
Right.
like some sign that he was struggling. It's like that saying, the quietest people have the loudest minds.
Often the people who are struggling the most are the ones who are putting the most effort into concealing it. Like they become experts at blending in, putting on this brave face for everyone while, they're silently battling all this turmoil inside.
So what happened next? Did Alex actually confide in her? Did she like confront him about what she sensed?
Well, one night Alex was feeling super overwhelmed, and he reached out to her, almost apologizing for burdening someone, he barely knew.
Wow.
But instead of like pushing him away or offering some generic advice, she did something really powerful. She just chose to be present. She didn't like bombard him with all these questions or try to fix him.
Right.
She just offered like a listening ear, a space for him to just be himself. No judgment, no expectations.
Yeah, it's such a good reminder for all of us, right?
Yeah.
That sometimes the best thing we can do for someone who's going through something tough is to just be there for them. Listen, without interrupting or offering unsolicited advice.
Exactly. There's real power in being present with someone. Letting them feel seen and heard without without feeling the need to fix or change them.
It's true. It's true. So she listened. What
Yeah.
did Alex share with her? Did he tell her everything?
He did. He just poured his heart out to her. He shared like the depth of his despair, all the fears he'd been carrying for so long, the shame that had kept him from even reaching out to his best friends.
Right.
And what's really remarkable is that she didn't try to like downplay his pain or offer these empty platitudes.
It sounds like she really created the safe space for him to be vulnerable without feeling judged. That's huge, isn't it? To feel like you can truly be yourself without having to like pretend or put on a brave face.
It is. I mean, true connection only happens in an environment of acceptance, non-judgmental acceptance.
Mhm.
It's about letting ourselves and others just be human with all our flaws and vulnerability.
It's true. So she listened. What did she do next? Did she offer him advice? Did she try to solve his problems?
She did something much, much deeper than that. She
Okay.
just acknowledged his pain. Like, she validated his experience without trying to diminish it or dismiss it. And then she asked him this simple but really powerful question. What do you need right now?
Wow, that's such a different approach than what we usually see, right? Instead of
Mhm.
jumping in with solutions or offering unsolicited advice, she empowered him to figure out his own needs in that moment.
It's about shifting the dynamic from one of fixing to one of supporting.
Hmm.
Instead of assuming we know what's best, we let the other person guide us. We honor their agency and autonomy.
So what did Alex need in that moment? Did he even know?
He didn't have a clear answer.
Uh,
He was overwhelmed, lost in this sea of despair,
Yeah.
and he had no idea what would even bring him comfort. And that's when she offered something so simple but so profound. Come meet me at the park near your house. I'll be there in 30 minutes.
It's amazing how sometimes the simplest gestures can be the most powerful. Right? Just being there for someone, offering your physical presence can be so comforting when they're struggling.
Yeah. I mean, human connection is such a powerful antidote to isolation and despair. And sometimes it's not about these big gestures or fancy words. It's just about showing up, being present,
Right.
offering a safe space for someone who's in the middle of a storm.
So that's exactly what she did. She drove to the park, and when Alex got there, she didn't overwhelm him with words or try to analyze the situation.
Yeah.
She just opened her arms and gave him a hug.
And that hug, in its simplicity, it just spoke volumes. It conveyed this feeling of safety, validation, unconditional acceptance. It was this physical embodiment of her empathy.
It's incredible how powerful human touch can be, especially when someone's going through something difficult.
Yeah.
Sometimes words just aren't enough.
Right.
And a simple hug can communicate so much more.
There's a reason we reach out for a hug, when we're feeling down or stressed.
Mm-hmm.
Physical touch releases oxytocin.
Oh, yeah.
It's a hormone, that's all about bonding and trust and social connection.
Right.
So in that moment, she wasn't just offering him comfort.
Yeah. She was actually triggering this physiological response in his brain, promoting like calm and well-being.
Wow. And Alex described that hug as a lifeline.
Wow.
Like it was this moment where he finally felt seen and understood. It's like that simple physical connection just broke down all the walls he'd built up around himself, and he could finally like let go and accept the support she was offering.
It's a powerful reminder that sometimes the most profound healing doesn't come from these grand gestures or these, complex solutions. It comes from these simple acts of human kindness
Yeah.
that just remind us that we're not alone in our struggles.
It really makes you think, how many times have we missed opportunities to offer that kind of simple but powerful support to people around us? Maybe we've been too focused on trying to fix things or give advice when all that was needed was just a listening ear and a hug.
We live in a culture that's obsessed with fixing, instead of just being, we're always trying to find solutions, control outcomes.
But sometimes the best thing we can do is just be present.
Yeah.
Offer a safe space for someone to just be without judgment or expectations.
But her support didn't end there, did it?
Right.
Was that hug like a one-time thing, or did she continue to be there for Alex?
Well, that hug, that was a turning point for Alex.
Mm-hmm.
It was like the thing that pushed him to start getting the help he needed. He started therapy, started opening up to his closest friends, and slowly began to rebuild his life.
So what role did the friend's girlfriend play in that, in that ongoing journey? did she stay involved?
She did, but not in like a controlling or intrusive way.
Right.
She respected his boundaries, understood that, he needed to figure out his own healing process,
Mhm.
but she was still there for him, offering support and encouragement without trying to, manage or dictate his journey.
So she really found that balance between being supportive and respecting his autonomy.
Yeah.
That that's not always easy to do, is it? To know when to step in, when to step back.
It's a delicate dance, for sure, but it's a dance worth learning. It's about honoring the individual's agency while also letting them know that they're not alone in their struggles.
And that's such a valuable lesson for everyone, isn't it?
Hmm.
Whether we're the ones struggling or the ones offering support, it's about finding that balance between lending a hand and respecting that the other person needs to figure out their own path.
It's about recognizing that true support isn't about fixing or solving.
Hmm.
It's about empowering people to find their own strength and resilience, creating a space where they can heal and grow at their own pace.
So what happened to Alex in the end? Did he make a full recovery? Did he ever tell his other friends about the role that the girlfriend played in his healing?
Well, Alex's journey's still continuing, but
Right.
but he's come such a long way.
Yeah.
He's learned to manage his anxiety and depression.
Mm.
He's rebuilt his relationships with his friends, and he's found a renewed sense of purpose and meaning in his life.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
It's a real testament to the power of vulnerability, of connection, and the transformative power of human kindness.
It is. And while, he eventually shared his story with his closest friends and acknowledged, the role that the girlfriend played, he also recognized that her actions, they weren't about getting recognition or praise.
Yeah. It sounds like she genuinely cared about him and wanted to help him through a tough time without expecting anything in return.
Exactly. Her actions were purely about empathy and compassion. A real testament to how human connection can heal and transform lives.
And that brings us to this really crucial point, doesn't it?
Hmm.
It's not always about these grand gestures or heroic acts. Sometimes it's the smallest acts of kindness, these seemingly insignificant moments of connection that can have the most profound impact on someone's life.
Yeah, it's like that saying, be kind, for everyone you meet is fighting a hard battle. We never really know what someone else is going through, right? And a simple act of compassion can make all the difference in the world. Absolutely. I think Alex's story really drives home the point that we're all connected in ways we might not even realize.
Hmm.
And our ability to empathize and offer support, well, it can be a really powerful force for healing and growth.
And what's so interesting to me is that it wasn't even one of his closest friends who ended up making the biggest difference. It was it was someone he barely knew, someone who, in a way, had less invested in maintaining a certain image within the group.
That's a really good point. It speaks to the power of an outsider's perspective.
Yeah.
Sometimes the people who are less caught up in our social circles can offer a unique kind of support.
Right.
They come in without all the preconceived notions or expectations that can sometimes weigh down, those long-standing friendships.
It makes you wonder if we sometimes build up these barriers to vulnerability even within our closest relationships.
Hmm.
Maybe it's the fear of being judged or the pressure to keep up a certain image,
Yeah.
or maybe it's just assuming that our friends wouldn't really understand.
That's definitely something to think about. How often do we censor ourselves, even with the people we're supposed to be closest to? And what would happen if we actually dared to be more open, more real, more vulnerable with them?
It's powerful. It's like a challenge to really look at how we communicate, to make sure we're actually making space for vulnerability and realness in our own circles.
Absolutely. Alex's story reminds us that vulnerability, it's not a weakness, it's a strength.
Mm.
It takes a lot of courage to step outside our comfort zones and admit that we need help, that we're not invincible.
And on the other side of that, it encourages us to be more aware of those subtle cues that someone might be struggling, even if they're doing everything they can to hide it.
It's about cultivating that sense of compassionate curiosity, being willing to look beyond the surface
Mhm.
and acknowledge that everyone's fighting their own battles, whether we see them or not.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the power of opening up, what are some key takeaways you think our listeners should really hold on to?
Well, I think Alex's journey gives us a few really valuable insights. First, it reminds us that we don't have to suffer in silence. There are people out there who care, who want to help, but we have to let them in. Reaching out, whether it's to a friend, a family member, a therapist, that can be the first step to healing and finding our way back to ourselves.
And second, it shows us the power of these unexpected connections.
Yeah.
Sometimes the most meaningful support comes from the people we least expect.
Right.
It really highlights how important it is to stay open to connection, even in those places where we might not think it's possible.
Exactly. It also challenges us to be more aware of how we can offer support to others. It doesn't have to be some grand gesture. Sometimes the simplest things, a listening ear, a hug, a word of encouragement, those are the things that make all the difference.
It's about shifting our focus from trying to fix everything to just being there. From offering solutions to simply holding space for someone to feel seen, heard, understood.
Alex's story is such a powerful reminder that vulnerability and connection, they're not just abstract ideas. They're the foundation for real human resilience and well-being. And they're within our grasp, all of us. We just have to have the courage to embrace them.
To our listeners, we really hope this deep dive has given you some food for thought.
Yeah.
Maybe even a little inspiration to be a little braver, a little more connected, and a little more compassionate in your own life. Remember, even the smallest act of kindness can ripple outwards, creating a world that's more supportive, more connected, one heart at a time.
Beautifully said. And never underestimate the impact you can have on someone's life. You might just be the lifeline they need to find their way back to themselves.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, take care.